Tom, are you okay?
I lost her.
Her?
She was going to be this epic, trilogy-worthy character. I was going to be the hottest writer in Hollywood. But I can't get past Act 1!
You need some writers group therapy. Hello and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers. Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. We talk about remakes so much. I think it's because Aladdin just came out and I'm just feeling like we're remake heavy in this world. But with all the remade shows on TV and remade movies, it got me thinking. I know a lot of agents and contests want original pilots. And yet, would it be smarter as writers if we're trying to sell something to write an updated remake on something at this point in the market?
That's interesting. I think most people would say, if it's a copyrighted material, you're showing off your ability to do it, but with the people you're pitching it to be able to actually, buy it or make it because of the licensing issues. So that's, unless you're specifically going to pitch it to, like if you're, remaking a superhero thing and you're going to pitch it to Marvel or DC and you have a connection to get in there, what are your odds of actually getting that script in front of the right person? If you have an agent or manager, then they can do it, possibly get it in there for you, I guess.
So you're saying write an episode of an existing remade show, like the new Roseanne or something.
Well, that's just, like most of the contests and fellowships say is, here's a list of shows that are currently in production. If you want to submit to this contest, you should write an episode of these shows. Those are remakes that are already in existence. You're not recreating it. You're not coming up with a new spin on it. You're just writing an episode of a remade show that already is being remade. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously, that falls right into the, requirements of most of those fellowships.
That's true. I wonder, because when you watch a show, I'm sorry, not watch a show, but when you're writing for a show, you need to watch the show to get the tone and the feel, right? But with all these remakes, I mean, like Party of Five, for example, am I watching the old one or the new one or what?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the new Roswell that the CW came out with, and that's. I mean, I read the synopsis of it. I watched the trailer, and I mean, maybe it's because I feel like that's too recent. Because I loved that series when it was on originally, with Katherine Heigl was on it, and Shiri Appleby. There was a great cast, and they did a good job, and the story was great. And now they've kind of re-spun it as a more immigrant-focused drama, and made it a little more darker and more adult. So I don't know. I feel like they've just taken something that I liked and redone it too soon. There's that old, is it too soon kind of thing. So in that respect, if you're going to remake something, make sure it's something that, is its time has come. Now, I think the CW show is doing fine. I think it got renewed. I'd have to double check. But then again, the CW renews almost all their shows every year because they don't expect it to get huge ratings. They just have loyal followings.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're going to pitch a remake, they're a good network to pitch to because they do it. Almost all their shows are either remakes or reimaginations of existing IPs.
Are they really? I haven't followed CW in a while. What's their
Riverdale, and then their spinoff of that is Katie Keene, are both from the Archie Andrews comics history.
Oh, and then they have Sabrina, right?
Sabrina's that's actually on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a Netflix show, but it's also from that universe. All the Batman, all the superhero stuff, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, The Flash. Obviously, those are reimaginings of the old superhero stories. And they're coming out with Batwoman. It's going to be the newest addition to that, series. So they're really deep in the remakes, but they're, known IPs and they have the backing of, a major, comic book company, DC. So they're kind of, I don't want to say pre-sold, but they usually have a pretty good chance, pretty good audience in the comic book world.
The Riverdale one to me is interesting because somebody had to have a concept or a pitch, because that is a very old comic.
Yeah,
And
I read that when I was, 10 years old, which is a long time ago.
but I mean, like, it wasn't even, to my knowledge, I don't think it was ever a cartoon show that I can remember. They had the Josie and the Pussycats
Yeah.
cartoon, but did they have an Archie cartoon show?
I think they did. It wasn't a long-lived thing, but they did do it back in, I think it was back in the 70s or 80s. They might have had some, they had to try it. It was a very popular thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever took off. They may have appeared in cartoons for other shows, like maybe they showed up on Scooby-Doo or something like that.
Okay.
Crossover kind of thing.
Yeah, because that to me is an interesting. I would argue that nobody who's like 25 and younger would even know what Archie Comics is.
It was a risk to bring that back because it is pretty. I think that the original one was like in the 50s. I think is when they started. They were very
Yeah.
wholesome 50s characters, but then to remake it, as this dark, edgy, drama with kind of like I don't know if I haven't watched it really, so I don't know if it's got mysteries and murder and mayhem or whatever or
It's
magic.
it's very adult. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I watched the first season. It's really good. It's very sexy. It's definitely not the Archie you
Ooh.
remember. So
Yeah.
they definitely they brought it back and they made it very edgy. Like, I'm sure the 50, like, if you're watching it and you're like, remember it from the 50s, you're like, what is this? This is not what I remember.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of, thinking back to the 50s is basically that era. There's a lot of stuff coming out of that era that's public domain. So if you wanted to remake something, you're better off trying to remake something that's public domain. In fact, I've seen contests. I think,
For public domain properties, yeah.
yeah, for public, yeah, what's your best? And I've submitted my, Robin Hood themed story to some of those. Those are stories which, they tend to like because they know they don't have to worry about the licensing part of it. That gives them, kind of a freedom there. They can do what they want. And, look at Disney. Most of their stories were public domain. They just figured, well, we'll just, save ourselves the headache and let's just look back at every fairy tale that's ever been and remake those.
Hmm. I mean, with them redoing every single one of their cartoons, I would be curious to know. I mean, I'm sure they already highlighted every writer they wanted for, the next 10 years to remake all of their cartoons, but it would
Yeah.
be interesting if somebody did write a spec script for, I'm trying to think of when they haven't redone yet.
Yeah. I think they're doing Pinocchio next. I think I read about that. Obviously Lion King's coming out.
Maybe Bambi or something, I don't know, but, like, maybe, okay,
Bambi.
yeah, maybe if you wrote a spec script for Bambi or something that they haven't touched yet, and you put a spin on it, I don't know, maybe it
Yeah.
might get through.
If you can get it through, that's the big question there.
Yeah.
They rarely go outside for those kinds of things. Bambi's funny. It's like, how would you remake that? When they remade Dumbo, they made it very human. They put a lot of humans in there
Mhm.
to carry the story. But what are you going to do with Bambi? Like make the hunters the main characters? Uh,
They're the bad guys.
right. But Pete's Dragon got remade. There's
I
so
feel
many
like
of
Pete's
them.
Dragon got remade several times. I could be wrong.
Uh, it's possible, but I mean, there was the most recent one I saw, which was pretty good.
Mhm.
If you're going to do a remake of something that you plan to submit, going the public domain route is your safe bet because at least you can go anywhere with it. You can take it anywhere. If you're going to remake something that's licensed or pre-existing with it and still has rights at a studio, you're going to have to go to that studio. If you're doing it as a writing sample, if you want to go in, somewhere and say, look, I can rewrite stuff and make it cool, then maybe that's your angle. But most of the time, you're gonna, especially with the contests, it's kind of weird in the contest world. You can write a spec script for a show on a different network, even if you're like pitching, for the Warner Brothers Fellowship too.
As long as it's on their approved list.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually it has to be stuff that's on the air. So, for example, I have a spec script for the Mindy project, which I can't use anymore because it's now off the air. 2 years ago, I
Right.
could have used it, but I can't use it now. So you do have to pay attention to that. But they don't ask for they either ask for original, like completely original, or approved shows, but they don't say, "Hey, remake
Yeah.
a show from the '70s," kind of thing.
Yeah. So unless, you're not going to be able to use, if you write a remake script, you're not going to probably be able to use it for the fellowships unless they have a submit something, I guess you could call it original because it's your original take on it. But I would like send an email to whoever is running the fellowship and ask them before you spend a lot of time writing something for a fellowship that is from a pre-existing intellectual property.
Yeah. But I would say if you do have an agent or representation or a manager of some sort, and you do want to write something to sell, a remade property might not be a bad way to go at this point in
I
time.
actually had a really cool idea for Wonder Woman years ago. This was like 5-6 years ago.
Mhm.
And, I wrote a short, like a, I don't know, 10-page short, kind of as a really short, cool, very encapsulated origin story for a Wonder Woman kind of, movie, like the kind of build the tone of the character and kind of that kind of thing. And I just didn't do anything with it. I never made it. I wrote it because I thought that the stuff they had tried hadn't worked yet. And then they came out with the Gal Gadot version, a couple years ago. And now it's like they kind of figured it out. So no one really needs my thing anymore. So be careful if you're going to do that. Make sure you're not going to wind up wasting your time. Mine was only 10 pages, so I don't feel like it was a huge waste. But if you're going to write a feature film or something or a pilot, make sure you're going to be able to use it in some fashion. Even if it's not something to sell, it's got to be something that you can use as a sample or a submission for contests and stuff. And a lot of contests won't take, copyrighted material.
Yeah.
Material based on copyrighted material.
So how about for all of you, what scripts would you want to remake? Let us know at WG Therapy on Twitter. You can also find us online at writersgrouptherapy.com. If you like what you hear, subscribe and share this with your friends. We'll see you next week.